What's up, everybody? Welcome to Podcast Now Plus. I'm Alex, and in this video, I want to take a look at the story that came out a little while ago, in that basically Game Pass was at some point potentially offered to PlayStation to put on their console, or to Sony, I should say, and they have chosen to block it. Now, this is that whole back and forth going on between Sony and Microsoft with the Activision Blizzard sale. A lot of just like smears against each other in like official documents and stuff, but staying out of that controversy and going to something I think that's maybe even more interesting is that a long time ago, a very long time ago, my cousin and I actually talked about, back in the day, probably back with Xbox One, about like, would Microsoft ever step out of the console game, and would they end up just putting their games, let's say, on PlayStation and just be, a game creator kind of thing, instead of also a system manufacturer and all that. And I honestly feel like, obviously, the way Microsoft has gone about the Series S and X this generation we're in right now, it's not like impossible, I think, for a future where there are no, I guess, quote-unquote consoles for Xbox. Now, you could say we're entering an age of no quote-unquote consoles for any of these, right? Kind of like all built into the cloud. But that's kind of the thing, right? Microsoft is the one that pushes more often, and they're the big leaders in it, being able to basically play your game wherever. Like, if you got the weakest kind of technology, chances are we're still going to figure out how to get Xbox games to play through it, right? And they've done an incredible and insane job over the last little while. So this is, by the way, like, this is not, honestly, this is not criticizing Sony for blocking it. This is not criticizing the idea of Game Pass. This is simply something that I want to talk about, that I do see a world where this makes a lot of sense. And to be honest, I think it's probably in Sony's best interest. I think it helps everybody if this is actually allowed at some point. And to be honest, I think at some point this will happen. I really do. If it's the PS6, if it's the whenever it is, I do think it's possible that Game Pass eventually comes to PlayStation, because again, it kind of puts everybody like in their spot. Sony, they want to do the big blockbuster games, obviously moving more into mobile too and live service, but they're known for their story driven, right? These big expensive games that they will not put on a subscription service. Fine, right? You can do that. And you also, you've been leading for quite a while with the systems, with the, and even PS3. I believe PS3 ended up outselling the Xbox 360. It obviously lost for an incredibly long time, but it ended up doing both of them did incredible numbers. But, PlayStation, has been known for a while, let's say, to sell consoles. There's nothing wrong with that. So it puts them in a spot where PlayStation consoles continue to sell. If you want your traditional console, PlayStation is really the only one, right? Nintendo is always going to have their wacky thing that's arguably better than all of them, right? Nintendo kind of quietly just crushes all competition over to the side, but Nintendo will always do that. And then PlayStation is more of that again. To be serious, PlayStation is that kind of serious, gaming console. And to Xbox's credit, like right now, the Series X is as well, but you would have PlayStation being really the only one, because honestly, I guess I'm taking like an extra step. I'm assuming if you put Game Pass on PlayStation, there really isn't too much of a reason to have the Xbox console. Now, that kind of goes in line with what Phil Spencer has said for a long time, that they don't care if you don't buy the newest Xbox consoles. The point of Xbox, the point of that brand, is you can play your games anywhere. So that's kind of the point. It's not actually a shot at them. This is not a shot at anybody. It's not a shot at Xbox at all, because it's kind of in their mentality that they don't need like the actual traditional home console. They can do it through the TV or through the computer or through your phone or through, whatever. They'll figure out a way to do it, and they already are. And then if you want their games on a traditional, platform where you're probably going to get the most out of it, I guess, besides PC, you have it on PlayStation. And I guess from PlayStation's point of view right now, the only thing I can think of is, and I guess they do say it, it's because it'll probably impact PlayStation Plus. I mean, yeah, that's true. Again, though, I actually think it ends up working for everybody, because you're probably going to see an increase of PlayStation. If Microsoft literally dropped out of the game for consoles and there was only PlayStation, is that great for like competition, right? Because that means like Sony could slack off and nobody could one-up them. It's not great. It's not great for competition, but it is the way it is. Sony would be the only one. So I imagine that they would make more money from allowing something like this, even though you could argue, well, would it hurt? Would you get Game Pass as well as PS Plus if they're on the same console, right? Like, I have both of them right now, but they're not on the same console. So does that change if you have them on the console? Well, I mean, a lot of them share. Game Pass shares games that PS Plus has. Both of them have the same kind of games for free. Not all of them, right? They both have their own kind of unique things. And I also maybe was thinking, maybe Sony looks at it too, where there's a sense that they don't want people to associate, like, you get Halo, or you get Gears, or you get, let's do some of the upcoming big ones, like Fable or Starfield. To get these games that are gigantic on Game Pass, whether or not you think that's a good idea, whether or not you think Sony should do it, right? You'll have that mentality of people that say, well, I just got Starfield. Now, I'm playing it on my PlayStation. It's an Xbox-owned thing. But I got Starfield because I have Game Pass. It's free, but Sony still wants me to pay, $70 for God of War 8. And it's like, in the fictional world that we're in. And I mean, in a way, I guess I can understand that, but it's like, I don't know, it's like living just simultaneously with the other thing and living in harmony. I really don't know. And I feel like it would work itself out if you just simply understand, well, you can get Game Pass on PlayStation, you get the great Xbox deal, so you can play Fables and Starfields and Avoweds. I mean, all these games are free on it. And yeah, you may not like that, but you may not like that Sony does the full price for a game. If you again see at the same time that Game Pass is doing it, again, we kind of have this issue right now, right? I honestly imagine that's part of the reasoning that Sony just doesn't say. Is you can look at the talk online, and even though they're on two separate platforms right now, you still have that issue. You still have that issue of people talking about, and again, it's a conversation. I mean, it can get into like a console wars thing, but the conversation of, well, Starfield's free and God of War Ragnarok you pay, and wherever you land on that, it doesn't actually matter, but there is that conversation, right? That's probably the issue. So if you're having that conversation now, when they're not even on the same console, and then you put them on the same console, so you have Game Pass and you have just, I guess natural, or what we had, historical, buying of these big games. If you have that next to each other on the PlayStation Store, how does that look? How does that look to an average person? And I think it varies between, the average person. So it's tough. I can imagine that's part of it. The PS Plus thing, I mean, I guess that's an issue. I don't really think it's the biggest issue, but I do think at some point this ends up happening. I mean, the writing is kind of on the wall. Again, I don't look at it. I hope nobody takes this the wrong way. This is not taking a shot, but like Microsoft has kind of been transparent with, we don't even need the console. Like, we're not in the console. In fact, haven't they kind of said something like that? That may be wrong. I could be making that up. But I don't really get the sense that they're in some sort of console wars thing. Their vision is simply like, play our games through Game Pass, right? That's that extra step they added over the last, 5, 6, however many years. Play our games through Game Pass, the best deal in gaming, and you can play it anywhere, literally anywhere, including, eventually, on rival consoles. And guess what? When that happens, you don't need an Xbox. Because again, if you're going to play Gears 6, you can play it on your phone. You can play it here or there. But if you want to play it on a traditional console, there'll actually only be one option left, and it's on PlayStation. Now, I guess there's a Switch. Like, could you do Game Pass on the Switch? Yeah, I think you could, to a degree. Well, Switch, I guess future Nintendo platforms. Who knows? Maybe the next Nintendo platform, considering it obviously would be more powerful. It would take work to get some of these games, the more powerful ones, onto the Switch 2 or whatever. But you could even do that. You could have Game Pass on Nintendo, and it's just more places to play these games. So we'll see. I thought that was pretty interesting. I don't know if we've heard that before, and it doesn't make it, fully known if Microsoft offered. It just says Sony has chosen to block. It could have just meant Sony went and said hey, never approach us with this idea ever. Or maybe Microsoft did ask and they said, no, we're not doing it. And furthermore, never talk to us about this again. It could be that. It could be the first thing as well. So let me know what you guys think in the comments. Make sure you guys are subscribed. Bell icon turned on so you know all these videos go up. I hope to see you all on tomorrow's video.